Okay, good afternoon. I'll declare the meeting open at 4 p.m. I welcome councillors, staff and members of the public who are receiving this broadcast of this electronic meeting, which is conducted in accordance with the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996. The Shire of Harvey acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. We pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities and their cultures, and to elders both past and present. Now, suspension of the Shire of Harvey standing orders. The Shire's meeting procedures will be modified to ensure council meetings and the public can follow and participate in the meeting as it progresses. Therefore, the operation of clauses 6.7, 1 and 8, 6.9, 3, A, B and C, and 13.4, 1A and 1C of the Shire of Harvey Meeting Procedures Local Laws 2017 be suspended for the duration of this electronic meeting. We have a resolution to that fact. Do we have a mover and a seconder, please? Move Councillor Coleman, second Councillor Beach. Thank you. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 2, record of apologies and leave of absence. So attendance, as I call your name, could you please raise your hand to confirm that you are connected and in attendance? Councillor Bill Adams. Here. Councillor Paul Beach. All good. Councillor Michelle Boylan. Councillor John Bromham. Councillor Francis Bergelin. Councillor Michelle Campbell. Councillor Craig Caboni. Councillor Robin Coleman. Councillor Wendy Dickinson. Councillor Tanya Jackson. Councillor Amanda Lovett. And Councillor Derek Simpson. I am present. The Chief Executive Officer is present. Executive Manager of Technical Services, Rick Lotsnicker. Acting Executive Manager of Finance and Corporate, Mr. Dean Winter. Acting Manager of Corporate Services, Vicky Small. Principal Building Surveyor, Mr. Merv Stewart. Manager of Planning Services, Simon Hall. Manager of Community and Economic Development, Mr. Patrick Quinlivan. Have we got? I've lost Patrick with his. And Manager of Special Projects, Pauline Peterson.
We do have Scott Dandridge in attendance.
Scott's in. Okay, Principal Environmental Health Officer, Scott Dandridge. All good. Okay, thank you. So, nil apologies.
Nil.
Any leave of absence?
Nil.
Nil. Item 3, application for leave of absence. Is nil. Item 4, reading from a book of learning and wisdom. They often say that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So in this present time, help those less fortunate, look after those in need, volunteer to help out in the community. For a little bit that we give will make an everlasting impact on someone special. In the words of Mahatma Gandhi, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Okay, item 5, declarations of members and officers' personal interest. We'll start at the top. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a number of items to declare in the community budget submissions. Item number 12.4.3. Reference number 10 refers to the Harvey Bowling Club, of which I'm president. Number 22 refers to the Harvey Senior Citizen Centre, for which I am the council delegate. Numbers 27 and 28 refer to the Harvey Rotary Club, of which I am a member. I'll declare an impartiality interest on all of those and stay in chambers and vote accordingly.
Thank you. Councillor Bromham.
An impartiality interest in lot 208 and the national, what do they call themselves? The National Council.
Councillor Jackson.
Yes, item 12.4.3 and 12.5.1 relating to the Marlock Community Association. I'm council's delegate. It's an impartiality interest and I'll stay in chamber.
Thank you. Councillor Beach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 12.4.3, the community budget submissions. I'm a council delegate on the Harvey Community Radio on 96.5 FM and the Harvey Community Resource Centre. I'm a deputy delegate to the Harvey Senior Citizens, all who have made submissions for consideration. It's an impartiality interest and I'll vote on the matter on its merits. And 12.5.2, the Harvey Recreation Grounds Needs Assessment. I was the past chair of the Harvey Recreation Grounds Advisory Committee, who initially proposed this study. So impartiality interest, and I'll stay in the chambers to vote on its merits.
Thank you. Councillor Dickinson. Sorry, Councillor Dickinson, we can't hear you, sorry. Still on mute, yeah. Okay. Do you want me to go to... Have we got Councillor Dickinson's from the previous meeting? Because I can read that.
Yep.
If you like.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay, you're away.
Got me now? Yep. Okay. Impartiality for 12.4.4. I'm on the Brunswick Grounds Committee, and there's 2 items on the COVID-19 response, local economic stimulus that affect that. And so I'll stay in chambers. Thanks.
Councillor Burgoyne.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've got 2 to declare financial interest in 12.2.4, the tender T072020. One of the tenderers is a business owned by my employer. So I shall declare that financial interest and leave the chambers while that's discussed. I also have an impartiality interest in 12.4.4, the COVID-19 response local economic stimulus stage 2. It mentions in there perimeter fencing around the Brunswick Recreation Oval. I'm captain of the local fire brigade. We share a common boundary on that fence, but I'll stay in chambers and vote on that accordingly.
Thank you. Councillor Caboni. Sorry, Councillor, we haven't got. You're away now, Councillor Caboni.
Right, don't know what's going on here. Firstly, to start with, if we submit our forms for declarations of interest before the meeting, do we still have to bring it up at the meeting?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, we do, Councillor Caboni, yes.
Right, I just thought I'd clarify that. Yeah, similar to Councillor Burgoyne, items 12.2.4, I'll declare a financial interest. In the tender, I have a financial arrangement with one of the tenderers and I'll leave the meeting for that item. And on impartiality for 12.4.4, the Brunswick Recreation Ground, as president of Harvey Brunswick Football Club, we are a user of the ground, and I'll stay in for that one.
Thank you. I will declare an impartiality interest in item 12.5.1, the Southern Seawater Desalination Coastal Community Fund. The budget submission for the Coastal Community Group, Shire of Harvey. I am the council delegate on the Binning Up Community Association, and I will deal with the matter on its merits and stay in chambers for the duration of the item. Also, an impartiality interest in item 12.5.2, Harvey Rec Ground Needs Assessment and Master Plan, as I am a council delegate on the Harvey Recreation and Cultural Centre Committee, and I will deal with the matter on its merits and stay in chambers for the duration of the item. Councillor Adams.
Impartiality, I guess it would be interesting. This is for the what do you call it thing? Community budget. The Harvey Main Street. There, I'm the council representative on that committee. So I declare an impartiality and I'll vote on its merits. Is that right?
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Coleman, did you have another interest? Just that your hand is still
No. Sorry.
raised on the screen. No worries. Councillor Burgoyne.
Sorry.
All good? Okay. Item 6, response to previous questions taken on notice is nil. Item 7, public question time. The Shire of Harvey has implemented the following procedures for members of the... Councillor Campbell, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think you forgot me last time as well.
I think I did too.
I have a few here. Thank you. Item 12.4.3, the community budget submission. I declare an impartiality interest for Lot 208 Youth Inc., Morrissey Homestead, Leisure Progress Association, Harvey Community Radio, Harvey Community Resource Centre and the MyLuck Community Association, as they've all submitted applications, and I'm the council delegate or deputy delegate, and I will stay in chambers. Item number 12.5.4, proposal for the youth strategy. Once again, Lot 208 Youth Inc. and Community Sale Training Trust. I'm a council delegate for both of those and will stay in chambers. And item 12.5.1, the Southern Seawater Desal. Community grants, declare an impartiality interest for Binning Up Community Association and MyLuck Community Association, as I'm a council deputy delegate for both of those and will stay in chambers. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Bromham, did you have anything else to add? Sorry, Councillor Bromham will just having a few technical. There you go. You're away.
I am? Okay.
You are now, yes.
I lost my page there for a moment. So my pecuniary interest was in 12.4.3. It was the National Progress Association and Lot 208. And I'll stay in chambers and vote on its merits. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dickinson.
I just had a question, if I may, Mr. President. I thought that we didn't have to declare impartiality if we were a council rep on committees. Could you please clarify that? Thank you.
We did check this information with Walker. If you're a council rep on a council committee, then you don't need to declare an interest. If it's an external committee, and you're a member on an external committee, then you would declare an impartiality interest. So such like Councillor Jackson with the MyLuck Progress Association, that is an external committee, whereas some of the other committees that are run or the advisory groups are council committees or working groups. So no declaration is required.
I possibly need to declare another couple of impartialities then, if I may. On 5.4.3, the Yarloop workshops, the UDIC Progress Association and the Harvey District's Historical Society. I'm the council rep, so I will stay in chambers and judge it on its merits. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Okay, item 7, public question time. The Shire of Harvey has implemented the following procedures for members of the public to submit questions and receive responses during electronic meetings. Public questions are to be in writing and to be received by the Shire of Harvey no later than 10 a.m. of the day of the meeting. Each question will be read in turn by the Shire President and responded to by councillors or senior officers as appropriate. And all questions and answers will be included in the minutes. We have one question from Mrs. Sheila Ferguson. Why was the policy changed to say that council, i.e. ratepayers, will pay all costs for partners accompanying councillors attending the annual Walga convention?
Councillors would have seen a revised attachment for this item be provided. As part of the agenda briefing discussion last week, I was asked to consider if the previous convention of paying for partners to attend the Walga convention could be included in the policy. So I've taken that on board and responded to that request by including it within the policy.
And part 2, what is the estimated annual cost if all councillors wish to attend the convention and all are accompanied?
Based on estimates, the cost for 13 councillors to attend the Walga convention would be approximately $26,500. It's quite difficult to estimate how many partners would attend and whether they would attend partner programs, but approximately an additional $2,500 is estimated if councillors attended with their partners.
Thank you. As there are no more questions, we'll move to item 8, petitions, deputations and presentations. The Shire of Harvey has implemented the following procedures for members of the public to submit deputations during electronic meetings. Deputations are to be in writing and to be received by the Shire of Harvey no later than 10 a.m. on the day of the meeting. All deputations are classed as public documents under the Privacy Act 1988. The CEO will ensure deputations are emailed to councillors prior to the commencement of the e-meeting. A list of deputations will be tabled at the e-meeting. Where a matter is contentious and it can be deferred, it will be subject to a report to council. For council to make a decision on a deferral until appropriate time the community can participate, or where a matter is contentious and it cannot be deferred, the Shire President may elect prior to the commencement of the meeting to have one speaker for the matter and one speaker against the matter address the e-meeting for a period no longer than 10 minutes each. All deputations will be included in the minutes and uploaded to the Shire of Harvey website, and all deputations received are classed as public documents under the Privacy Act of 1988. And no deputations were submitted for this meeting. Item 9, announcements by a presiding member or CEO without discussion. Nil. Item 10, confirmation of minutes. The ordinary council meeting of Tuesday, 28th of April 2020. Recommendation that minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday, 28th of April 2020 as printed be confirmed as a true and correct record. We have moved Councillor Coleman, second Councillor Lovett. Is there any queries, any questions? Councillor Dickinson. Oh, sorry. All good? Okay, we'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 11, receipt of minutes and recommendations from committees. The Alcoa Harvey Sustainability Fund Committee, Wednesday 29th of April 2020. Recommendation that the minutes of the Alcoa Harvey Sustainability Fund Committee held on Wednesday the 29th of April 2020 as printed be received and the recommendations contained therein be adopted by council. We have moved Councillor Jackson to seconder. Councillor Beach, thank you. Any discussion, any questions? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Thank you. Officers' reports. We have the following items which will be voted on individually, and they are 12.1.1, 12.1.2, 12.1.3, 12.2.4 and 12.4.4. Are there any other items that councillors would like to discuss separately? Councillor Adams.
Would you read those again, please?
So items 12.1.1,
Yeah,
12.1.2,
yeah,
12.1.3,
yeah.
12.2.4,
Or tender, yeah.
12.4.4.
4.4.4. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. So are we all happy then to move the rest of the agenda on block? Councillor Bromham.
Yeah, Mr. President, I just have one question in relation to the Dog Act delegation when it goes straight to SAT rather than coming back to council.
So
I just want to know why that occurred, because obviously, you know, we can bog SAT down in things that are unnecessary.
we'll discuss that item separately. Councillor Bromham, if happy to move that if we're all happy, the rest of the agenda be moved on block.
Yeah.
Do we have mover? Councillor Jackson, second Councillor Beach. Thank you. We'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay. Item 12.1.1, Dog Act delegations. Councillor Bromham, would you? Right. We have officer recommendation. So do we have someone happy to move the officer recommendation? Councillor Coleman, second Councillor Simpson. No questions?
No. Yes.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Actually, I would like to move an alternate motion, if I may, in relation to it, just to see if it has any merit. The motion that I would like to move is that the office recommendation, but I'd like to delete point 6, the keeping of dogs, attachment 6.
We have a seconder. Councillor Bromham. Councillor Simpson, would you like to?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Councillors, thank you for your time. I have raised the alternate motion because I have concerns in relation to this proposed new delegation policy to the CEO from Council. My concerns relate to process and also to procedural fairness. We currently have the Dog Act 1976 and the Shire of Harvey Dog Local Laws 2017 to provide officers with a framework in which to apply the local dog laws in relation to the keeping of more than 2 dogs. Currently, an application is referred to council with an officer's assessment and recommendation for determination by council. Under the proposed delegation schedule, this decision will be determined solely by Shire officers. An applicant has no right of appeal and would need to commence a SAD process to have the decision reviewed. Hence my concerns re process and procedural fairness. A decision by officers based on local laws, referred by the CEO under delegation to those officers for decision. There is no other mechanism for review. Whilst the local laws are prescriptive, it has been demonstrated that there are extenuating circumstances to the request to keep more than 2 dogs on occasions. And council has determined a considered approach and reviewed and determination of the facts as presented. There are presently only perhaps 4 or 5 requests per year. So the additional time and paperwork involved in these applications coming to council is certainly not onerous. My other concern regarding this report before council is the mandatory $100 application fee for processing this application. It's certainly top of the range for local government charges and gives little comfort to an applicant regarding the process of the application because of the potentially flawed process as previously outlined. For these reasons, I would urge councillors to consider and retain the decision-making process for the keeping of more than 2 dogs as part of council's decision-making process, rather than with delegation, which can only result in more referrals to SAT, as applicants have no other recourse or avenue for appeal. With a council decision, they have an opportunity to present their case and receive a published decision. There is not the transparency in the decision-making process with in-house delegation. Councillors, I commend this amended motion for your consideration. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the amendment? Councillor Beach.
Hang on. Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. Look, I totally agree with what Councillor Simpson's been saying, but having said that, and if we go through the history of the applications that we have received over the years, the staff always assess the application to keep more than 2 dogs against GAD versus the Shire of Harvey, as I understand it. And it's my recollection that every time that the staff have put the recommendation to council, we've accepted it. Now, in recent times, we decided as a council not to accept the staff's recommendation, and that went to SAT, and SAT gave us a bit of a dressing down to say, you've already had a ruling on this, GAD versus the Shire of Harvey, and now we've got another test case, and it was overturned. I think the staff do a job when they are advising us to say that this is the application, we've measured it against the previous SAT decisions, and we advise this or that. And we've tended, as I said, over many, many years to accept that. And the only time that we went against it, the applicant went to SAT and they won, and we were left with egg on our face. And I have to say that councillors that are no longer with us have often asked previous administrations, can't you take this on delegation? And they were saying, no, we don't. It's a minefield. So perhaps Councillor Simpson might be right. It should come to council, but that's a bit of the background and probably why I'm suggesting that the staff should have the delegation, because their track record is 100%. Thank you.
Another speaker for. A speaker against. Councillor Burgoyne.
No, a question if I may.
Question.
The only recourse currently, if it comes to council, the only recourse is to go to SAT as it is it not?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think I'll speak against that because this changes nothing. The only recourse we've got that a person has, an applicant has, is to go to SAT currently, regardless of whether it comes to council or whether it's dealt through delegation. So I don't see it changing anything either way. So I'll speak against, or I'll vote against that. Thank you.
Another speaker for. Councillor Adams.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, my main problem with this is that we seem to be delegating away our powers, if you like, or as a council, our control, if you like, over what goes on. I agree with Councillor Simpson. I think we should keep the opportunity to have a say yes or no with this. And what I would also like to do is to add a point 10 to the recommendations, that we review this recommendation in 12 months' time to see how it goes, so that we can in fact judge whether we've been doing the right thing, if you like. Thank you. But as I say, that's my main problem. We seem to be delegating away everything. And John Sable would agree.
Okay, do we have another speaker for? Councillor Bromham, for or against? Okay, Councillor Bromham.
Yeah, I think what occurs in these situations is it's another level of bureaucracy, and there needs to be a local recourse for people to actually come to council and put their case to councillors who they vote for. And then we can make a decision. Sure, I know staff might have good information, and as Councillor Beach has said, but this provides two avenues for people to go through rather than one. And I think it gives due diligence as far as we're concerned in our role as councillors.
Speaker against. Councillor Lovett.
Thank you, Mr. President. I speak against this because the dog issue to a large degree is an operational matter, and we are there for governance and not operations. We're not the ones that get the complaints and the calls about the dogs barking in the middle of the night. That's staff that get that. Staff know the dogs, they know, they're the ones that go out and look at the properties, they look at the conditions, and I believe that they have the knowledge and the expertise that we don't, to be able to make these decisions. Whatever decisions are made by staff, they can come through to us at some point if need be, but I don't believe this needs to.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Beach. We haven't got your mic on yet, Councillor Beach.
Sorry, I thought I was automatically down. I'm back. Yeah, all done. It's probably a question to Ms. Reardon, in as much as that if an applicant came and brought in that they wanted to keep a dog, more than the two, and they asked, could this go before council rather than staff making the decision on the delegation? Would that be permitted?
I think if you had a process, then you would follow the process. And so it would be assessed by staff. I can't imagine what the extenuating circumstances would be to treat one differently to another.
Mm, yeah.
But if they ask for it to be decided by council rather than by delegation, that's not an option then.
I wouldn't imagine every application would need to be treated in the same manner for this delegation and other delegations. So I would say that follow due process and it will be decided by staff.
Okay, thank you.
Any other speakers for the motion? Against the motion? Councillor Simpson. Question, Councillor Adams, or?
I can't get the bloody thing down. Yeah. Yes, I'd like to seriously put that point 10, that we review this decision in 12 months' time.
We can be up to the mover, or we can move an amendment to the alternative motion.
Councillor Simpson.
Make an amendment if that's what you want to do.
Either that or Councillor Simpson, if he wishes to add it in, otherwise you will have to move an amendment, Councillor Adams. Yes.
Thank you. I'm more than happy for the decision to be reviewed in 12 months. Absolutely, if it's successful.
Sorry, can I just point out to councillors that all of these delegations that are before you, if they are not approved and in place, will require every single one of these to come to council for a decision. So even though we are talking about attachment 6 for keeping of dogs, every other decision will need to be a council report. We've reviewed the delegations. Delegations are required underneath the Dog Act for any of the duties that are provided to local government. So I'm just saying you can review it in 12 months' time, but they are required.
Sorry, could you just clarify that for me? Are we talking about attachment 6, or were you actually referring to each of the other attachments related to the Dog Act delegations?
I was referring to all of the delegations that are provided as part of this report. I'm uncertain as to whether Councillor Adam wants a review just on the dangerous dogs, or sorry, keeping of dogs, or whether it's all of the delegations. But as mentioned, when we've reviewed the delegations, we're required to have delegations. Otherwise, all of these items as listed in the attachments would need to come to council for a decision.
Right, that's easy fixed. Review attachment 6 in 12 months' time.
Councillor Simpson, would you like to sum up?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to have this discussion. As I was reflecting on this particular item, GAD versus the Shire of Harvey was certainly foremost in my thoughts as I was working through that. And at the end of the day, applications to keep more than 2 dogs. There are a number of reasons why people put in requests. It is often quite an emotional application, and therefore determination can have profound effects on members of the community that are actually making this actual application. And I think it is prudent that there is the opportunity for an applicant to be able to actually make an application and have it actually determined by by community representatives. Whilst I certainly appreciate the comments the Councillor Beach made, at the end of the day, it only goes to SAT if the decision is not acceptable to the applicant and they wish to take it further. So an application can come to council, be approved, and we would have, you know, for the life of the dog or the duration of the time, there would certainly be no further problems. So I would certainly urge you to consider seriously the ramifications of this particular amendment, and request your support, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. So I'll put the motion. Is there anyone against the motion? So the motion, amended motion, is carried. Okay. Item 12.1.2, council policy, councillor and CEO attendance at events. And Councillor Beach.
Sorry, didn't look.
Okay. So Councillor Coleman.
No, sorry.
Sorry. Okay, so we have an officer recommendation. Mover or a seconder or alternative recommendation? Councillor Adams.
This is the councillor and CEO attendance at events we're talking about, is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah. Can I ask the question, what prompted this policy to be written? I mean, yes, I appreciate that there's a cost attached to this, but as far as events and so on and so forth are concerned, it was pointed out to me, it'll be sort of 16 or 17 years ago now, that the attendance of partners and so on and so forth at these, particularly the convention, is a bit of a reward, if you like, to allow partners, in my case, a wife, to yes, just accept a little bit of thanks for the effort that they put in. So, as I say, I don't think I've seen this new revised policy, whatever it is, but I mean, I was interested to know what drove the idea of the new policy in the first instance, and I'm just wondering, other councillors, Margaret River, for argument's sake, what's their take on all this?
Councillor Adams, it's a requirement under the Local Government Act to have a councillor attendance at events policy. That was the reason that the policy was drafted.
Say that again?
The Department of Local Government has required that there is a councillor and CEO attendance at events policy. That is why this policy has been drafted. That's the same with the following item in regards to councillor training and professional development. There's a requirement for the policy as well. Both need to be adopted by absolute majority.
Yeah, so we could have gone the other way and said, yes, it's quite all right for partners to attend and so on and so forth, could we?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
I say we could have gone the other way and said, yes, it's okay. We're happy for partners and wives and husbands and the rest of it to attend these things, as we have done in the past. We could have gone that way.
I think, are you talking about the following policy, which is the councillor training and professional development policy in regards to attending? This one is attendance at events and what tickets.
Yeah, well, whatever. They both seem to have the same thing. It's a bloody great heap of stuff here to read, but yeah, looks that way.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Caboni. Sorry, Craig.
I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. We have a seconder. Councillor Bromham. Any questions, any queries? Okay, I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Craig, you against? Your hand's still up.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, mate.
All right. Okay, motion's carried. Thank you. Absolute majority, 13.
Check the previous
Yeah.
decision.
Can we just go back again to 12.1.1 and please have that vote again? There is someone's having a bit of technical issue. So with regards to the Dog Act delegation, so we can have those who voted against the motion, please.
So, Tom, Beach, Dickinson, Six.
Yeah. Okay.
Six.
Yep. 7-6. Yep. 7-6. Thank you very much. It was 7-6. Okay, item 12.1.3, Council Policy, Councillor Training and Professional Development. Councillor Beach. You.
No, I was trying to catch your attention. Councillor Coleman wants to speak to you.
Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Councillor Beach. I was just saying, we just voted on the amended motion, didn't we? Not the actual motion?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Fine, thank you.
Okay, so we're on to, if it's clear as muddy water, we're 12.1.3. And we have the officer's recommendation on page 16, or an alternative. We have a mover, Councillor Bromham, second Councillor Simpson. Is there any discussion, any questions arising? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is Robin or Councillor Coleman. You against, your hand?
Is it up?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
That's
Sorry.
all right. Okay. Motion, Councillor Caboni, you're against?
Shit.
I most certainly am.
Okay. Motion is carried 12-1, absolute majority. Okay, item technical services. Item 12.2.4, tender T072020 Viaduct and Hinge Road upgrades. Yep. All good. Okay, we have officer's recommendation on page 31. Or is there any questions pertaining to this? Do we have a mover or and seconder? Councillor Campbell, moving. Seconder, Councillor Simpson. Oh. Is there any questions, any discussion? I'll put the motion. Anyone against the motion? Motion is carried 11-0. Absolute majority. No, simple on that one.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, thank you. So we'll bring the other two. Councillors, that was carried 11-0 as presented. Item 12.4.4, COVID-19 response local economic stimulus stage 2. Any questions or any queries? We have a recommendation on page 50. I've moved Councillor Jackson. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Burgoyne. Do we have any questions pertaining to that? Any queries? Okay, I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried 13-0, absolute majority. Okay. Should I go through a roll call? Roll call now. Yeah, finally, there we go. Okay, we'll just run through our roll call, which we all love. Councillor Bill Adams. Councillor Paul Beach. Councillor Michelle Boylan. Councillor John Bromham. Councillor Michelle Campbell. Councillor Craig Caboni. Councillor Robin Coleman. Councillor Wendy Dickinson. Councillor Tanya Jackson. Councillor Amanda Lovett. Councillor Derek Simpson. Ms Reardon. Mr Lotsnicker. Mr Winter. Mrs Small. Mr Hall. Mr Dandridge. Mr Quinn Liven. Mr Stewart. And Ms Peterson. And Councillor Francis Burgoyne. How can I miss you down there? Okay. Where are we up to now? Okay. Yes, item 13. Elected members' motions of which previous notice has been given. 13.1, notice of motion by Councillor Adams. They've moved Councillor Adams. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Burgoyne. Councillor Adams, do you wish to?
No, I'm not going to comment any further. I'm very pleased that it's been agreed to, and I'm happy to leave it at that.
Okay. Is there a speaker against the motion? Anyone speak for the motion? Okay, so I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 13.2, notice of motion by Councillor Adams. We have a seconder. Councillor Beach. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'll try and keep this as brief as possible, but I do beg your indulgence for a minute or two. Thank you, Councillor Beach, for giving me the opportunity to speak. And thank you, Mr. Winter, for your response. And thanks for not bringing beauty parlours into the debate. And I even sensed a little bit of sympathy for my view. Now, I cannot get away from the view that the management of the Leschenault Pavilion are taking a bit of an advantage of their privileged position. Really, I think they are using us, using the ratepayer in effect. Now, when this pavilion was built for some $4 million, $4 million, if my memory served me correctly, the design had been subject to a thorough process to achieve a facility which, in those famous words, was fit for purpose. If it wasn't fit for purpose, it shouldn't have been built. When the management of this facility took over, they must have seen it as fit for purpose also. Now, to ease them into this lease, the Shire agreed to concessions such as utility costs and a subsidy to cover staff wages if required. Now, this kitchen must have been very fit for purpose because it was able to generate sufficient income not to require subsidising in that first year. So I guess I asked the question, what's gone wrong? We've now been asked to cover the utility costs of June 2022 and wages for as long as is necessary. Now, at the end of the day, although this is a Shire facility, as it's been pointed out to me, it is also a commercial enterprise required to stand on its own feet. There are many other food outlets in our Shire that find themselves in a similar position, unable to provide a sufficient income to cover their outgoings, but without the ratepayer dollars to back them. Many of these small businesses would also be ratepayers, of course. The National Pavilion have said they want some 68,000, 70,000 to upgrade their kitchen. A kitchen that was quite fit for purpose in 2015-16, so that they can prepare a larger number of meals in, I would argue, direct competition to local small cafes and restaurants. And here, in my view, is the crunch, paid for with ratepayer dollars. Whichever way you look at it, more meals from a ratepayer subsidised kitchen must mean less meals from other privately owned outlets and kitchens. Now, I ask you, is that a level playing field? Is that fair? I don't think so. I think not. I'd argue that to make this all a bit fairer, it would not be unreasonable to at least offer these small businesses the opportunity to upgrade their kitchens just a bit, to meet their needs, to boost their business opportunities as they attempt to scramble out of the impact this virus has had on them also. 15,000 is not big bickies by any means, but would perhaps mean a new oven or a coffee machine, and I would give these small business owners, it would give these small business owners a bit of a lift. Now, I didn't calculate as many as 40 businesses. I had it around about the 30. But anyway, and I guess the amount of money involved would draw a bit of a comment, or oh, shiver my timbers, that's a lot of money. Mr. Winter makes the point that much of this funding will not benefit local trades. Equally, neither would the 70,000 which has now been earmarked for the pavilion. Same thing applies. They're going to have to buy their stuff from outside. Now, I have stipulated in my motion that local trades must be employed, and equally suppliers, whilst they may have to source a product from outside, will benefit from the business opportunity. And I asked the question, why after all did our Prime Minister give all us poor old pensioners $750 to put in our pockets to increase our purchasing power? So I would therefore urge councillors to support my motion. I see it as a win-win-win, a win-win-win stimulus, a lift for small business and levelling the playing field, business going to local tradespeople, business going to local retailers. Ratepayer dollars well spent in these unprecedented times. Now, councillors, this is your opportunity to let your local community know you care and are prepared to be a bit proactive for a wider community benefit. It's your choice.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Do we have a speaker against the motion? Councillor Jackson.
Yes, thank you. I think what's been forgotten here is the Leichnot Sporting Association is a not-for-profit group made up of at least 4 clubs, and I'm not sure if it's 4 or 5, but I'm sure it's at least 4. And the benefit of the commercial activities on that site go to the user groups and not to personal profit. So we aren't talking about a profit-making organisation where the stakeholders receive the profits. The user groups, through the sporting clubs who might receive any of the profit coming from that group, not to the pockets of the people that own it. I think that we have many clubs through the Shire that receive government funding, local government funding through our grants processes and ongoing budget allocations, football clubs, bowling clubs, other recreation centres, and the Leichnot Sporting Association is one of those. So why would we separate this group from any of the others that receive substantial funding through our budget? So this motion says, let's put money into the pockets of the profit-making business sector, which we in fact have done to some degree through trying to stimulate the economy through things like our stimulus package, without actually directing it straight to the profit-making sector. Those people that own those buildings and those businesses may or may not be local, and there's certainly the infrastructure that goes into place may not go into a locally owned building. The owners may in fact be out of the area. The business itself, operating locally, may or may not be ratepayers in the Shire of Harvey in that sense. So I would say that we should not be singling out this because somebody did not like the decision of council previously, and that there are many other business sectors that would say, well, why are you doing that for kitchens across the Shire, when in fact this has been driven by a not-for-profit organisation, like all the others across the Shire, gaining funding from council. So I don't support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Is there a speaker for the motion? Speaker against? Councillor Beach.
As the seconder, Mr. President, I thought I would have gone after Councillor Adams, but I will put my 2 bobs worth in now, please. Look, I really supported letting Councillor Adams having his say and putting this motion forward, because I mentioned at the last meeting that I believe that we're stepping into some dangerous waters to support a business enterprise, not to support the local clubs, but this request for the $68,000 to upgrade the kitchen so they could attract more people from the local area to come to a restaurant type facility and to enjoy an evening together, which I don't have any problems with. But it is a business enterprise in that regard. It's not there at that particular point in time for the volunteers, as Councillor Jackson has pointed out. And if it was purely for the volunteers, I probably wouldn't be speaking. So I believe that we're in dangerous waters supporting the business enterprise. And I'd like to just raise the issue about Stirling's Cottage, which was built quite a number of years ago, and it was then labelled a tea rooms. And they had certain restrictions placed upon them, and those restrictions were designed to protect the businesses in the town of Harvey that were paying full commercial rent and paying rates. So the Stirling's Cottage was made a tea rooms, and despite a number of the previous tenants saying, we'd like to operate a restaurant there, the answer was always no. You're in competition with our rate-paying businesses in the town, and to provide a tea rooms and pay commercial rent, I think you might be on a fair footing. So that was really the reason I wanted to support Councillor Adams. Just to let you know that there is another Shire building that is in competition with the community, and they have certain restrictions upon them. And the money that we are putting into and that we've agreed, and I'm not backing away from that, that was the agreement, is really to turn that place into a restaurant as a money-making business venture, not necessarily for the volunteers, like, you know, all the other clubs that we have around the town. So, yeah, I think we're in dangerous waters here, Mr. President, but thank you for the time.
Question, Councillor Jackson.
Sorry, just a point of clarification, the difference between a commercial entity and a not-for-profit entity, please.
Sorry, Councillor Jackson, who are you addressing that question to?
Perhaps it was to staff, but the reference was just made to a commercial business, and this is to a not-for-profit organisation. So I was just asking for some clarification. If I don't need to clarify more than that, but it would have been to staff.
Yeah, Leichenant Sporting Association is a not-for-profit incorporated association. Mr. Quinlivan, have you got any comments to make? But in reference to your question, Councillor Jackson, all of those profits go back to the clubs that are involved in that association. It is not a private profit-making commercial operation.
Thank you.
Mr. Quinlivan, have you got anything further to add?
Councillors, good afternoon. It's correct that the Leichenant Sporting Association is incorporated under the Incorporated Associations Act, and is non-for-profit. Any funds that are generated through the operation of the facility are used to meet their operating expenses, and should there be any surplus funds available, they are distributed to the club. So it's not a commercial entity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quinlivan. Councillor Lovett.
Thank you, Mr. President. With this item coming through previously, I took advantage of the opportunity of the offer or request from LSA on their social media page a few weeks ago to ask for volunteers. It was the Mother's Day weekend, and I went and volunteered up there in the kitchen and where I was needed that evening. I think that this upgrade is needed. What I witnessed firsthand that evening was the main chef and 2 staff in the kitchen who have very little room to move. There's been some upgrades done, but it is a cramped area to work in. Not that this is going to fix that, but their equipment and various things that they want to achieve in this upgrade, they are needed. And having gone up and worked there as a volunteer, I've seen it firsthand. So I can't support this motion.
Speaker for or against, Councillor Coleman? Against.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think we've got a little off track in that the motion is about investing in kitchens for other organisations, and we've got to be very, very careful between the difference between a lessor and a lessee. Now, the Shire that owns the buildings is the lessor, and whoever takes that on forms an arrangement to lease that kitchen or that building and does what they deem or what the lease agreement says that they can do with it. Whether it's a bowling club or the sporting association, it doesn't really matter. The motion to put a commercial or to pay for kitchens for others is problematic in that a business owner is very different to a building owner. Now, those that own the buildings largely are not running cafes and restaurants in them. They lease them out and draw money from rent. And the people who are leasing them have structured their business, whether it be a cafe or a restaurant, around those kitchens and facilities largely. To invest into many of the kitchens who, not exclusively, of course, because I don't know everybody, but many of whom I know are owned by very wealthy people, would be, I don't believe, a good use of Shire funds. And I also think that, again, we've got to be very careful between the building owner and the building and the business owner, which is very, very different. Walk in, walk out. Some people have to invest in their own equipment. Largely, though, if I'm renting a building, if I'm going to run a business, I will ask my lessor to pay for certain things. And some of those things might be improvements to my facilities that I want to be able to use. So, you know, who are we really funding? Are we funding the guys, or the, you know, not guys, but the people that own the buildings? Or are we funding the businesses that are using the buildings? And I think we've got to be very, very clear about that, because even within our Shire, I am very well aware of some lessors who own the buildings, who are not giving the rent relief and who are not passing on the COVID-19 goodwill that we all assume is happening to some of the lessees. And whether that kitchen was upgraded or not wouldn't make a damn ounce of difference. So I think put aside the Leisure Nault Association debate, because I think it's muddying the waters. You know, we've got to come back to Bill's motion, which is, are we going to pay $15,000 to put a kitchen into somebody who's sitting on probably $500,000 in their bank? So I think we've got to be a bit mindful of that when we look at this particular motion and bring it back to the raw bones of it, rather than muddy who's using the business, because that's a commercial decision. Whether we as a Shire lease that property out to somebody, or whether it's so-and-so down the road leases his property out to somebody, they are actually commercial arrangements, irrespective of who the lessor is. So I think we need to hone that back and be very, very mindful of what we're talking about and who is actually going to benefit from that $15,000 if it's approved. Thank you for your time.
Councillor Carboni.
I'll speak against Councillor Adams' motion and in favour of the officer's recommendation. And I do so in one of the things I first did when I came on council almost 9 years ago was to vote on what sort of a building we wanted on that ground. And at the time it was Councillor Sable and myself who moved and seconded that we build the two-storey premises that is there today as opposed to a single-storey one. And I know Mr. Stewart, as the principal building surveyor, had a hand in the design of that building, and I guess he can explain the reasons why the kitchen is the way it is today. But there was plans that went around at the time when we voted on it, and we selected the building that we've got. Now, there's no question that this motion's come out of the previous motion that went to council, and he's extracted the kitchen part of the motion out and formed this motion. And there's no doubt that the LSA is struggling where it is, and it wants to upgrade its kitchen to attract more patrons. But I mean, let's not forget what the building was put there for the sporting groups, the many people that use that ground. And if they want to upgrade the kitchen to attract the sporting community in that Australian area, and the parents and people back to make it a going concern and something that one day that hopefully can turn into a profitable position, well, then we should be out to support it. Now, I know, there's no other place in the Shire that attracts so many kids to a ground, or parents or people or whatever on a weekend, as does that recreation area there at Australind. Now, I know as president of Harvey Brunswick and running our facility, just how hard it is. And the problem comes in when you've got to employ people. And when you're dealing with the number of people that there is at Australind, they've obviously got to employ people to run that kitchen. Now, we're fortunate enough at Harvey Brunswick to have volunteers, and we make a profit out of our kitchen. We're fortunate in that regard. But with the bar, we're lucky to break even. Now, last year, when you combine the two, Harvey Brunswick lost $20,000 last year. Now, we haven't put our hand out because we've got reserves or whatever, and we're certainly looking at ways in which we can return to profit at Harvey Brunswick, which we hope to do this year. So I think Councillor Jackson put it very eloquently, the history of it. There's no doubt they're struggling, and we hope that it returns to profit one day. If the kitchen needs an upgrade to put it on that path, well, then I think that we have to support it. Now, we gave the Bulls $6,900 for solar panels today in today's meeting. I could equally ask that Harvey Brunswick gets that, put solar panels on at Harvey Brunswick, but we do what we can do at the time, and we do what's in the best interest of the Shire. I can't support Councillor Adams' motion. Thanks.
Councillor Bromham.
Thank you, Mr. President, through you. I just want to clarify a couple of things in support of what Councillor Jackson has said. If we read the Harvey Recreational Ground Needs Assessment and Master Plan that has been put together, you'll note that the West Australian Government indicates the importance of good kitchens and food venues for sport, to support sporting clubs and children into the future and to make these places grow. So I think even comparing the two is incorrect, as Councillor Coleman has said, and that I have to speak against Bill's motions on that hand, and that we have a very good document, very well written, that tells us exactly what we should be doing in relation to our sporting environment. Thank you.
Any other speakers for the motion? Any other speakers against the motion? Councillor Burgoyne.
Thanks, Mr. President. We seem to be getting a little bit off tact here. All the talk about Leschnall Pavilion is not sort of heading towards where we need to be, because what we're talking about is giving 40 small businesses within the Shire $15,000 each for kitchen upgrades. Now we're talking $600,000 of ratepayer money, and time and time again, when and only a couple of weeks ago when it was brought up about an information bay, was we can't bandy around ratepayers' money or public funding just like that. And $600,000 is an awful lot, I think, to be giving to private enterprise, because at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. We're looking at subsidising private businesses, not giving money or not upgrading our own facilities, which belong to the ratepayers. So there is no way on earth that I can ever think that I would vote for this, for those reasons alone.
Thank you, Councillor Burgoyne. Any other speakers for the motion? Against the motion? Right of reply, Councillor Adams. Bergie, did you have a question? Councillor Burgoyne?
Yeah, I think I've answered myself, but no one's actually moved the officer's recommendation, have they?
No.
No.
No. Okay, just double checking.
Councillor Adams, you're...
Yeah, well, it doesn't look like I'm on a winner, does it? First up, it's not a question of whether I liked or disliked the decision. All I'm really aiming at is a level playing field. The decision's made, and I'm not arguing about that. There's no point. The decision is made. But enterprise, people don't go into an enterprise like this with the idea of not making a quid. Of course they want to make a quid. And they want to make a quid by getting more custom. Okay, that's fair enough too. But I would have thought that anything like that, they upgrade from the profits that they're making. And as I sort of said earlier on about fit for purpose, I think the purpose was, and well, obviously, to offer the the opportunity to go upstairs, have a drink, have something to eat without going out there with a big commercial idea to bring in people from outside, and that's what they're trying to do. When the point was made, I think that the name what's there and having it put up with it, same applies with the National Pavilion. These people went into the thing knowing what was there, and it was certainly good enough in the first place, as we know. So, and the other point was made about money going into the pockets of very many of the small business cafe owners and stuff like that. $500,000. Anyway, I stick by a boost for not only small enterprises in our Shire, but also gives the opportunity for trades in our Shire and retailers in our Shire to also participate in this stimulus. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. I'll put the motion. Those against the motion. Yep. Motion's lost.
By how many?
112.
Sorry?
Motion was
112.
lost. Councillor Adams.
I know who's right.
Thank you. Moving right along. Item 14, notice of motion for following meeting. Councillor Beach? No?
No,
Okay.
there you go. Thank you.
Okay, it's nil. Item 15, question by members of which due notice has been given is nil. Item 16, reports of members, all in the big tin can with Kira. Item 17, seal register and officer recommendation on page 7. They've moved Councillor Caboni, second Councillor Campbell. Is there any questions? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 18, new business of an urgent nature introduced by decision of meeting is nil. Item 19, matters behind closed doors is nil. And we thank everyone for their attendance, and we'll close the meeting at 5:23. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.